The invoice sat on my kitchen counter like a coiled snake. $85,000. My son Brandon wanted $85,000 for his wedding, but the kicker? I wasn't invited. The email had come 3 days ago. Dad, Vanessa and I have decided on an intimate ceremony. Family only. But we're counting on your contribution. Consider it payback for everything you couldn't provide growing up. Wire transfer details attached. I'm Daniel Morrison, 62 years old, retired firefighter from Phoenix, Arizona. My hands still shake sometimes from 30 years of pulling people from burning buildings, but they've never shaken like they did when I read that email. Not when I lost my wife Rachel to cancer 12 years ago. Not when I worked 70-hour weeks to put Brandon through law school after she died. But this made my hands tremble. The kitchen felt smaller than usual that Tuesday afternoon. October heat still clung to Phoenix like a bad memory, but I'd turned off the AC to save money. Old habits. Rachel used to joke that I'd wear a sweater in summer to avoid using electricity. She wasn't entirely wrong. After she passed during Brandon's sophomore year at UCLA, money got tight. Real tight. Her medical bills had drained our savings, and my firefighter's pension only stretched so far. But I made it work. I always made it work. I picked up the invoice again. Not even a personal note, just a spreadsheet. Venue rental at some resort in Sedona, $28,000. Catering for 150 guests, $19,000. Photography and videography, $12,000. Designer wedding dress, $8,000. The list went on. Flowers, music, transportation, honeymoon suite in Bali. Every line item felt like a slap. Brandon had always been smart. Honor roll, debate team captain, full ride to UCLA undergrad before I had to step in for law school. He graduated top of his class from USC Law 3 years ago. Landed a job at Morrison and Associates, no relation. Different Morrison pulling in $200,000 a year. Easy. Last Christmas, he'd shown up in a Mercedes. Told me it was pre-owned like that made it humble. The watch on his wrist cost more than my monthly pension. So why couldn't he pay for his own wedding? I walked to the fridge, grabbed a beer I'd been saving, twisted the cap. The bottle sweated in my palm. Through the window above the sink, I could see my neighbor Jerry trimming his hedges. Normal Tuesday stuff. Nobody getting invoices from their kids. Nobody being erased from their own son's life with a spreadsheet and a wire transfer form. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Did you get the email? Need confirmation by Friday. Vanessa's parents are covering their half $28K. We're counting on you for yours. There it was. Vanessa's parents' doctor. Richard and Patricia Chen, both surgeons. Living in their Scottsdale McMansion, they were putting in $28,000, which meant the total wedding cost was $113,000, and somehow Brandon and Vanessa couldn't manage the $57,000 gap themselves on their combined $300,000 annual income. Unless this wasn't about the money at all. I set the beer down and opened my laptop. Time to do what firefighters do best. Investigate before the situation explodes. Brandon's Instagram was public. I'd stopped following him 2 years ago after he unfollowed me, but I could still see everything. The photos told a story I hadn't wanted to face. Brandon and Vanessa at charity galas. Brandon and Vanessa at wine tastings in Napa. Brandon and Vanessa skiing in Aspen. In every photo they looked perfect, polished, expensive. I scrolled back further. A year ago, Brandon had posted a selfie at some rooftop bar with the caption, "Finally feel like I'm where I belong." The comments were full of congratulations. People I didn't recognize talking about leveling up and leaving the past behind. Then I found it, 3 months ago. A dinner party photo. Vanessa's parents, her brother, several well-dressed couples I didn't know. The caption, "So grateful for Vanessa's amazing family. They've shown me what success really looks like." Not a single mention of his own family. Of me. I clicked on Vanessa's profile. More of the same, but then I saw a post from 2 weeks ago. A photo of a massive diamond ring, with the caption, "He asked, I said yes. Can't wait to start our perfect life together." So blessed that Brandon comes from such an uncomplicated background. No drama, just us and our beautiful future. Uncomplicated. That's what she called it. My wife dying. Me working doubles at the firehouse. Coming home smelling like smoke and sweat to help Brandon with his homework. Me selling our decent house in Tempe to move to this smaller place so I could afford his law school tuition when scholarships only covered part of it. Uncomplicated. I took another sip of beer and kept digging. Brandon's LinkedIn showed he'd been promoted to senior associate 6 months ago. His Facebook, which I thought he'd deleted, was still active, but I'd been blocked. I could see it through Rachel's old account, though. She'd never closed it after she died, and I'd kept it active, sometimes just to look at her photos. Through her account, I found Brandon's posts. One from last month made my stomach turn. Excited for the next chapter. Some people are meant for bigger things, and some people hold you back. Growth means leaving behind what doesn't serve you anymore. 37 likes, including one from Vanessa. I leaned back in my chair. The ceiling fan spun slowly overhead, the same fan I'd installed when Brandon was 8 and Rachel was still healthy. He'd handed me tools, asked questions about how things worked. "Dad, how do you know where the wires go?" He'd been curious about everything then. What happened to that kid? My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Morrison? This is Jessica Delgado. I'm a wedding planner working with your son Brandon and his fiancée Vanessa." Her voice was professional, friendly. "I'm calling to confirm some final details about the ceremony." "Details?" I kept my voice neutral. "Yes, for the guest list. We have you down as contributing to the wedding fund, but I noticed you're not on the ceremony attendance list. I wanted to make sure that wasn't an error on our end." "No error," I said slowly. "That's correct. I'm paying but not attending." There was a pause. "I see. Well, that's certainly unusual. May I ask, is there a specific reason?" "We've had family conflicts before, and sometimes we can help mediate." "There's no conflict," I interrupted. "My son doesn't want me there. Says it's intimate. Family only." Another pause. Longer this time. "Mr. Morrison, I've been doing this for 15 years. That doesn't make sense. You're his father." Apparently not the right kind of father for the kind of wedding they want. I could hear her typing, looking at the venue and the guest list. "This is a very upscale event. The Sedona Vista Resort, 150 guests, most of them from Vanessa's social circle and Brandon's law firm. I see maybe 10 people from Brandon's past, and they're all from law school or after. No one from before that? No one, not even his godparents. It's all recent connections." She paused again. "Mr. Morrison, in my professional opinion, something doesn't feel right here. Are you sure you want to contribute to this?" I thanked her and hung up. My beer was warm now. I dumped it in the sink and stared out the window again. Jerry had finished his hedges. Everything looked normal. But nothing was normal. I spent the next 2 days going through old boxes in the garage. Photos, report cards, birthday cards. Evidence of a life I'd lived that Brandon seemed determined to forget. Rachel had kept everything. Every drawing Brandon made in elementary school. Every award from debate tournaments. Every acceptance letter. I found the letter from USC Law. Brandon had been waitlisted initially. I'd written a letter, a father's letter, about how proud I was of him, how hard he'd worked, how he'd overcome his mother's death to still maintain his grades. The admissions office had called me personally to say how moved they were. 2 weeks later, Brandon got in. He never knew I'd written that letter. I found the checkbook, too. Every tuition payment. Every rent check for his apartment. Every time he'd called saying he needed money for books, or a suit for an interview. 12 years of checks, adding up to numbers I didn't want to calculate. And now he wanted $85,000 more, for one day, for a party I couldn't attend. On Thursday, I drove to Scottsdale. I'd looked up the Chen family's address through public records. Firefighters learn to find information when they need to. Their house was exactly what I expected. Gated community. Palm trees. 3-car garage. I parked my 15-year-old Ford pickup down the street and waited. Around 2 in the afternoon, Vanessa arrived in a white BMW. She was followed 20 minutes later by an older woman I recognized from Instagram, Patricia Chen, Vanessa's mother. They both went inside. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I've learned that sometimes you need to see the fire to know how to fight it. I walked up to the house and rang the doorbell. Patricia Chen answered. She was elegant, probably around my age, wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly expenses. Her smile was polite but confused. "Can I help you?" "Mrs. Chen, I'm Daniel Morrison, Brandon's father." Her expression shifted. Not quite recognition, more like discomfort. Oh my, Brandon's father. I didn't realize we weren't expecting. I know, I'm not invited to the wedding. but I needed to talk to someone about the financial arrangement before I wire the money. She glanced back into the house. Perhaps this isn't the best time. Mom? Vanessa appeared behind her. When she saw me, her face went pale. Mr. Morrison, what are you doing here? Having a conversation about my son's wedding, the one I'm apparently funding but not attending. Patricia Chen touched Vanessa's arm. Sweetheart, why don't we all sit down and discuss this like adults? 5 minutes later, I was in their living room. Leather couches, abstract art on the walls, a view of their pool through floor-to-ceiling windows. Vanessa sat across from me, twisting her engagement ring. Patricia had offered coffee, which I'd declined. Mr. Morrison, Vanessa started, her voice tight, this is really awkward. Brandon should have handled this better. Handled what better? Asking me for $85,000 or not inviting me to watch him get married? She flinched. Patricia stepped in. I think there's been some miscommunication. When Vanessa told me about the wedding arrangements, I assumed you'd chosen not to attend. That perhaps you had health issues, or... He told you I didn't want to come? Vanessa looked at her mother, then back at me. Not exactly, he said. He said you two had agreed it would be better if you weren't there, that you'd be uncomfortable around our social circle, that you preferred to contribute financially instead of what? Instead of embarrassing him? The silence was loud. Patricia Chen sat down slowly. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to be very direct with you. My daughter loves Brandon. But I'm also a mother, and I'm also a surgeon who's learned to read between the lines. What exactly did Brandon tell you about this wedding? I pulled out my phone and showed her the email. She read it, her expression hardening with each line. When she finished, she looked at Vanessa. Did you know about this? Brandon handles the family stuff, Mom. I just thought. You thought his father agreed to pay for a wedding he's not invited to? Patricia's voice had an edge now. That's not how families work, Vanessa. Brandon's family is complicated, Vanessa said weakly. I'm not complicated, I said quietly. I'm a retired firefighter who lost his wife and raised his son alone. I worked 2 jobs to put him through school. I sold my house so he could finish law school without debt. The only thing complicated is why my son thinks I'm not good enough to watch him get married. Vanessa stood up. I need to call Brandon. She left the room. Patricia and I sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Mr. Morrison, she finally said, I want to apologize. I had no idea this was the situation. My husband and I were told. We were told you'd had a falling out with Brandon years ago, that you'd been absent from his life, that this financial contribution was a way of making amends. I've never been absent. I've been calling him for 2 years. He doesn't answer. She closed her eyes. I'm very sorry. This is not acceptable. Vanessa came back, her phone clutched in her hand. Brandon's on his way. He wants to talk to you. Good, I said. I want to talk to him too. Brandon arrived 30 minutes later. I heard his Mercedes pull into the driveway, heard the car door slam. When he walked into the living room, he was wearing a suit that probably cost $3,000. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked successful, confident, expensive. He looked nothing like the boy who used to help me wash the fire truck on Saturdays. Dad, his voice was controlled. This is inappropriate. You can't just show up at my fiancé's parents' house. I can when my son won't talk to me any other way. He glanced at Patricia and Vanessa. Could you give us a minute? They left. Brandon sat down, maintaining careful distance. What do you want? I want to understand. Help me understand why you need $85,000 from me but don't want me at your wedding. He sighed, like I was being difficult. Dad, it's not personal. Vanessa and I have a certain lifestyle. The wedding is important for our social standing, for my career. The senior partners at my firm will be there. Vanessa's father's colleagues from the hospital. These are important connections. And I don't fit those connections. You're a retired firefighter who lives in a 1,500-square-foot house. You drive a truck that's older than my law degree. You don't understand the world I live in now. The words hit like smoke inhalation. The world you live in. The one I paid for. I've paid you back, he snapped. I send you money every Christmas. $500? Once a year? While you drive a Mercedes and wear watches that cost more than my mortgage payment. I earned that. I worked hard. You worked hard? I stood up. My hands were shaking again. You worked hard? Brandon, I worked 70 hours a week for 12 years to make sure you could work hard. Your mother died. making sure you had a future. You didn't build your life alone. I didn't ask for any of that. The room went cold. I stared at my son, this stranger in an expensive suit, and realized I was looking at someone I didn't recognize. "You're right," I said softly. "You didn't ask for it. You just took it. And now you want more. The wedding. I'm not paying for your wedding, Brandon. If you don't want me there, I don't want my money there either." His face darkened. "We already signed contracts. If you back out now, we'll have to take out loans. It'll damage my credit. Then you'll have to figure it out. Like I had to figure out how to raise you alone. Like I had to figure out how to pay your tuition. You're a successful lawyer, Brandon. Be creative." He stood up, his jaw tight. "You're really going to do this? You're going to ruin my wedding because your feelings are hurt?" "No. I'm going to not pay for a wedding I'm not invited to, because I finally understand what you really think of me. And Brandon, you're right. I don't understand your world, because in my world, family means something." I walked toward the door. He called after me. "If you do this, we're done. You understand that? We're done." I turned back. "We've been done for a while, son. I just didn't want to admit it." I left, got in my truck, drove home through Phoenix traffic with tears I hadn't cried since Rachel died streaming down my face. But I wasn't done. Not yet. That night, I did something I'd learned in 30 years of fire investigation. I gathered evidence. Every photo, every report card, every tuition receipt, every check I'd written. I scanned them all. I compiled them into a folder. Then I created a Facebook account, just a simple one, public, with my name. I wrote one post. "My name is Daniel Morrison. I'm a retired firefighter and a father. My son is getting married in 2 weeks, and I wanted to share some photos from his life. From the time I raised him alone after his mother passed away. From the times I worked double shifts so he could focus on school. From the moments I'm apparently not good enough to witness in person but good enough to pay for. Congratulations, Brandon. I hope your wedding is everything you dreamed of." I attached 20 photos. Brandon as a kid in my firefighter helmet. Brandon at his high school graduation, me in my dress uniform. Brandon at his law school graduation, me standing awkwardly in the corner because I'd driven 12 hours to be there. The USC acceptance letter. Copies of tuition checks. I posted it at midnight. By morning it had been shared 300 times. By noon it had been shared 2,000 times. By that evening it had been picked up by a local news site. Firefighter father excluded from son's wedding despite funding it. Story goes viral. My phone started ringing. News stations, reporters, bloggers. I ignored them all. Except one. Jessica Delgado, the wedding planner, called me back. "Mr. Morrison, I just saw your post. I need to tell you something. 2 days ago, Brandon and Vanessa came to me with a special request. They wanted to make sure that if you showed up at the venue, security would turn you away. They gave me a photo of you. They were concerned you might cause a scene. They thought I'd crash their wedding. Yes. Mr. Morrison, I quit this morning. I've never worked with a couple who treated family like that. I wanted you to know that I've informed the venue about the situation. I can't stop the wedding, but I made sure they understand what kind of people they're dealing with." I thanked her. An idea was forming. The Sedona Vista Resort was 2 hours north of Phoenix. I drove up there 5 days before the wedding. The manager, a woman named Carmen Rodriguez, met me in her office. "Mr. Morrison, Jessica told me about your situation. I'm so sorry. Can I see the venue? The space they've reserved?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It's technically not allowed, but given the circumstances." She walked me through. It was beautiful, I had to admit. A terrace overlooking red rocks, tables set up for a reception, a ceremony space with a view that went on forever. Everything Brandon and Vanessa had probably dreamed of. "Carmen, can I ask you something? Do you have any availability that weekend for a different event?" She checked her computer. "We have a smaller ballroom available." "Why?" "I want to host a party. Nothing fancy. Just a gathering. For families who've been excluded from important moments. For parents who've been told they're not good enough. I'll pay whatever it costs." She looked at me for a long moment. "Mr. Morrison, you don't have to pay anything. Let me handle this." The next week was a blur. My Facebook post had exploded 50,000 shares, news coverage from multiple states, strangers reaching out with their own stories of family rejection. Some offered money. I declined. Some offered support. That I accepted. Carmen called me 3 days before the wedding. Mr. Morrison, I have an update. 6 couples have reached out. They all have similar stories, children who excluded them from important events, who took their money but not their presents. They want to come to your gathering. And Mr. Morrison? 3 of them are guests who were invited to Brandon's wedding. They've declined their invitations. Who? I can't say. But they're people from Brandon's law firm, senior people. The day before the wedding, I drove back to Sedona. Carmen had arranged everything. The smaller ballroom was set up with simple tables, a buffet, a screen for a slideshow. 12 people showed up, parents who'd been rejected, excluded, told they weren't good enough for their children's big moments. We shared stories, we cried, we laughed, we made a support group out of pain. And then, the wedding day arrived. I didn't crash it. I didn't need to. I stayed in my small ballroom with my new friends, people who understood. We watched our own slideshow photos of our children when they were young, before they decided we weren't enough. But Carmen sent me updates via text. Brandon and Vanessa's wedding was smaller than expected. 30 guests hadn't shown up. The senior partners from Brandon's firm sent regrets they'd seen the news coverage. Vanessa's mother had shown up, but left after the ceremony. She'd apparently had words with Brandon. The wedding went on, but it wasn't the social triumph they'd imagined. Around 8 p.m., there was a knock on the ballroom door. I opened it to find Brandon standing there, still in his tuxedo. His face was red. His perfect hair was disheveled. "You did this," he hissed. "You sabotaged my wedding." "No, son. I just chose not to fund it. The rest was you. My colleagues think I'm a monster. Vanessa's family is barely speaking to her. Her mother called her selfish. This was supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be about love, about family. But you made it about money and appearances. That's on you." Behind Brandon, I could see Vanessa in her $8,000 dress, crying in the hallway. Patricia Chen was with her, but she looked disappointed, not comforting. Brandon's voice cracked. "I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted people to respect me. They would have respected you more if you'd respected your father." He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "What do I do now?" "You live with your choices. You and Vanessa have your marriage, your careers, your expensive life. You'll figure it out. You're smart, remember?" "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we fix this?" I thought about it. About 12 years of sacrifice. About Rachel dying and me promising her I'd take care of our boy. About every missed call, every ignored text, every time I wasn't good enough. "Maybe someday," I said. "But not today. Today you're married, and you made it clear I wasn't part of that. So go be married. Live your life. But don't expect me to fund it anymore." I closed the door. Behind me, one of the other fathers, a man named Tom, whose daughter had excluded him from her baby shower but wanted him to buy the crib, put his hand on my shoulder. That was hard. "Yeah," I said. But it was right. I never did wire that $85,000. I used it instead to start a scholarship fund at the Phoenix Fire Department for children of first responders. Rachel would have liked that. Brandon and Vanessa are still married, as far as I know. I see updates occasionally through friends. He got passed over for partner last year. The senior partners apparently weren't impressed with how he treated family. Vanessa's relationship with her parents is strained. They moved out of Scottsdale to somewhere less expensive. I don't know if they're happy. I hope they are, in whatever way they can be. As for me, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. That support group we started in Sedona? It's still going. We meet monthly now, parents who've been rejected by their kids. We support each other, remind each other that our worth isn't determined by whether our children recognize it. And I've started dating a woman named Gloria, a retired teacher whose son told her she was too old-fashioned for his tech startup wedding. We go to dinner, we laugh, we understand each other. My house is still small, my truck is still old. I still turn off the AC to save money. But I'm not ashamed of any of it anymore. I survived fires for 30 years, and I survived losing my wife, and I survived raising my son alone. I'll survive this too. Because in the end, I learned something that took me 62 years to understand. You can't make someone value you. You can only value yourself. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see your worth, even if one of those people is your own son. I loved Brandon. I still do, in that deep, parental way that never quite dies. But I love myself too now, And that makes all the difference.